Guess what, motherfucker?
Well, everyone, the quarantine continues unabated, so I suppose it's time for us to talk about the Tiger King.
I'm as gay as a $3 bill, and I'm standing in a cage with 5 full-grown tigers and lions.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic. This is the Armchair Auteur, a video project I've been doing for about a year where we talk about new films, old films, things that are barely films, just a lot of stuff about film culture. And I, like many of you, have been stuck in my apartment for weeks now. And even though I have a plethora of good movies I can watch that people have recommended to me, that I've put on my watch list, that I've been planning to watch and now have the time to do, and good TV series never finished that I have time to binge, instead of doing all that stuff, I watched 7 hours of The Tiger King on Netflix. Why? Because of peer pressure. Because friends of mine watched it and wouldn't stop talking about it and sharing memes with it that made no sense to me outside of the context of the film, so I decided to watch it. Now, this is not going to be a review of The Tiger King, because it's not really something substantive enough to me to actually want to explain. But more, I want to talk about why it's become such a huge phenomenon over the last few days. The reasoning why is actually very simple, and it's not like I'm like breaking anyone's brains explaining it, but I still want to get into it. So the thing about The Tiger King, if you have not watched it, by the grace of God, it is a 7-part documentary miniseries about Joe Exotic, this famous, currently imprisoned big cat breeder who owned like a huge like zoo, for lack of a better term, of like tigers. He breeds baby tigers and like has people pet them and stuff, and he's a ridiculous character. You may have seen him on Last Week Tonight a few years ago when he was running for president. He's a nut. He's the Tiger King of the title, but on a larger scale, the documentary is actually about the entire big cat industry in America and all the different weird denizens in that world. Essentially speaking, there's multiple different like zoos and like people who trade these cats and breed, you know, giant tigers outside of the wild here in America, and they make tons of money because people want to pet baby tigers. It's really simple. I think at its core, Tiger King explores some of the weird psychology behind like cat people, like people that like cats, on like a much grander, more like esoteric scale. And, you know, people go crazy for cats, people go crazy for kittens, people go crazy for cat videos. So like a baby tiger is sort of like the Mewtwo of that, of the cat world. So the one constant throughout this documentary, even though it technically is about like small crime and animal abuse and a lot of really just fucked up con artisty type things, the crux, the thing that drives the entire narrative, is what people will do to get to hold a baby tiger. And that to me is fascinating. Like the idea that people become like addicted to being a part of this thing that they would never otherwise encounter in their own habitats unless they like went to Africa. The things they're willing to do to themselves, to each other, just to be a part of this world is really interesting. You know, like if that had been what the documentary was about, it'd probably be like a really well-made docuseries. But it's not really about cats at all, or this industry, or any of the larger things. The filmmakers just spent a ton of time with all these super weird people and then made like the most irresponsible, artistically, journalistically film they could make to show everyone's like worst qualities in as salacious a way as humanly possible. And you know, that's its appeal, honestly. A lot of people involved with the film seemed frustrated that it was such a like gossipy, like shitty, you know, pulpy movie, and they thought it was going to be like a serious documentary about this industry. But you know, that wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean? If it was, no one would care. Nobody would have like gotten into that. You know, me personally, I love documentaries about like fucked up con artists and like scary, weird, crazy people. I don't really enjoy documentaries as much that are about like vital topics or things that are like actually touching. I don't care as much. So for me, I knew I was going to enjoy Tiger King. I knew I was going to have a good time. I knew I was going to end up rooting for some ridiculous scumbag. And of the ridiculous scumbags in the entire series, it's probably easiest to root for Joe Exotic because he's just so entertaining, even though he's like clearly just like a bad person, obviously, you know. Would I laugh if Donald Trump pardoned him and he got out of jail? Sure. Like I would probably like watch whatever series they made out of that from a, you know, like a puerile, like voyeuristic perspective, but as like an actual human, I wouldn't want to be like friends with them or whatever, you know. But in the context of this weird, you know, kaleidoscopic look at these fucked up people, he's, you know, somewhat sympathetic at times. Why did this blow up the way it did, right? And there are other docuseries that have come out recently that are more well-made, more interesting, more like special, but like no one has watched them or seems to care about them. Like, for instance, HBO has a series called McMillions about the Monopoly game con thing that went on in the 90s. Like, if you guys remember the McDonald's Monopoly game, years ago when it first launched, it was like rigged for like years. And the story about how many people were involved and how it went on and how McDonald's didn't even know and stuff is like this 6-part documentary series on HBO. And it's like really fascinating. And I finished that right before I watched The Tiger King. And I really dug it. If you haven't seen McMillions, definitely watch McMillions. It's good. It's not as memeable as The Tiger King, but it's a really good documentary. The reason it's not as fun to talk about or to convince your friends to watch, though, is that after you get past the first episode, where like you meet like the FBI agent Doug, who like is in the investigation, it's like it feels like a very colorful, like ridiculous Steven Soderbergh comedy. After you break through that barrier, it's like a real heartbreaking look at like capitalism and like how fucked up people are when money is involved and like all these messed up things people do to each other and people getting hoodwinked and stuff. And it's like actually really kind of depressing. And I was like, oh, it's one of these. And like I just immediately stopped caring. You know what I mean? Like the first few episodes I binged, and the ones after that I like watched in pieces because I was like, well, I'll finish this eventually. Like clearly this isn't going to end in a fun way, you know, and I'm not interested anymore. And to be honest, I even had a little inkling of that feeling when I was watching Tiger King. Once I realized like, oh, these are like really messed up people and like this isn't going to end funny. This is going to end like sad. I was kind of like bummed, you know. But in reality, the main reason The Tiger King works so well has nothing to do with the actual craft and filmmaking, or even the subject matter necessarily of The Tiger King. It did well because we're all cooped up in our apartments and it's on Netflix. Netflix has a real strength at creating content that is otherwise subpar, and in any other kind of vacuum you would objectively look at and go, this is meaningless. And then they put it on their platform, and they aggressively use their algorithm to target it towards people when they're bored and they can't find something to watch. And then once you actually sit down and watch it because, you know, you have nothing else to do, you get so engrossed because it's so bad, for lack of a better term. Look at other different documentaries like this that have been popping really hardcore and laid a bunch of memes, usually on weekends where like nothing else is going on and people are stacked in the house. And how those things like aren't even important anymore, and like no one thinks about them or talks about them. Like this is slightly different, but the Fire Festival documentaries, Netflix had one, Hulu had one, but those when they launched were like all anyone would talk about. It was this crazy train wreck documentary you couldn't stop looking at and making jokes about and Googling to see what happened to the people after the documentary was over, trying to get that DLC action from the documentary. And it's, you know, not something you think about anymore, really. You know, it was just that it was on a streaming platform when we weren't doing anything, and it got big, and then we all talked about it, and then we moved on. Like, it's the talking about it part that is what goes. Because, like, I saw people asking on social media, like, why is everyone watching Tiger King? And it's like, everyone's watching Tiger King because everyone's watching Tiger King. It's like a self-fulfilling thing. Because people are all watching it and talking about it and making jokes about it, people want to be in on the conversation. That's, like, totally normal. I mean, there's tons of television series that still have that. I guess there's not tons of them anymore, but I mean, like, Game of Thrones had that kind of power. I don't feel like Westworld does, but there are shows that people still watch, like, en masse, you know? And the reason I think these documentaries are doing so well for Netflix in this regard is because a lot of the times they're essentially just, like, big, exhaustingly large reality shows. They don't even feel like documentaries anymore. They're often filmed and directed very irresponsibly. They don't have, like, a real... They don't seem to have like a real substantive like narrative core to them. They're essentially just about throwing a bunch of Jerry Springer shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like I remember last year, the year before, when like Abducted in Plain Sight came out. That's like a really harrowing and depressing documentary, but it's constructed in such a Maury Povich manner that you can't look away. It's that train wreck thing, you know? And Netflix is so good at this, I think, because they know when to target content. They know when you're not doing anything. You know, they gather so much data from every user. They know when there's going to be a bunch of people doing nothing. You know, I mean, not saying they knew like COVID was coming or like that this was going to happen or they had like inside intel or something, but you know, even some of their narrative features that pop off are almost never good movies. And if they were released theatrically, no one would ever care. But Bird Box, not a very good movie, like at all. But it came out during winter break last year when like no one was doing anything else, and it's bad in like a uniquely kind of entertaining way, and people all jumped on it because they weren't doing shit else. You know, it's not a movie everyone would have like happily gone to a theater to watch together, but it's definitely something everyone would just click play on because they're in the house with their family and they need something to shut everybody up. What's interesting about this to me is there are other times when Netflix attempted to create something like this, a big moment that everyone could gleam onto, and just failed. And I feel like they really learned their lesson from the Cloverfield paradox. If you recall, a few years ago, they made another Cloverfield movie, this time, you know, even further out from the original concept, and it costs, I don't remember how much money, like a lot of money to make, and the studio realized they were not going to make much money off of it. So they sold it to Netflix. Netflix bought it, and then during the Super Bowl, Netflix advertised it, saying this is dropping like now, or after the Super Bowl or whatever, which is huge. The idea of dropping like a big, you know, not quite tentpole level, but like a big sci-fi actioner onto Netflix out of nowhere with like no prior real conversation except some leaks from the trades, that's like a big deal. And I think everyone thought, oh cool, like a huge movie that we would go see in theaters is on Netflix, we're all gonna sit and watch it together. And like people watched it and like it wasn't good, but it wasn't like so egregiously bad that it was entertaining you could make really good jokes about it. It didn't feed content, it didn't feed like the hungry beast that is social media discourse. So everyone was like, this is not very good. Anyway, and they moved on. That was it. In the years since, though, Netflix has targeted with like specific things and things that are like designed to attract this kind of conversation, this kind of devotion, and this kind of like morbid curiosity. You know, when reality television first popped off and like a lot of different reality shows were like these big, you know, must-see TV nights, it was still like a relatively new genre. Nowadays, a lot of television content is unscripted, like so much of it. And even though there are people that obsessively watch reality shows and then live tweet them and talk about them amongst their fandoms, they're much more spread out than they used to be because there's like a niche reality show for like every topic, subject, demographic, what have you. So to me, it seems like stuff like Tiger King is tapping into that desire for monoculture that we used to get from certain reality shows, only now it's like packaged in this weird new format that's quite frankly, very exploitative, and it's self-sustaining, you know what I mean? Like, it's not so much that the content itself is great, it's that it begets new consumable content. When Tiger King is over, you go look at Tiger King memes, you go search news articles about what happened to these characters after the camera's cut off, and you make new content, and then like there's just all this, it's just like this feedback loop, and I don't know how much longer it's gonna last, probably a couple of days, maybe. I mean, by the time you watch this video, it might already be boring, who knows, but as more people get in touch with it, it becomes big. And at the moment, there just happens to be a lot of people with nothing to do and wanting to turn their brains off and insert Tiger King. So yeah, I don't know. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to tell you to watch it. Like, if you happen to really love animals and stuff like that, maybe don't watch it. Like, I'm not a big animal person, so like that stuff didn't like get to me the way it did other people. I was mostly in it for like the laughs, but it might, you know, be not great for you. But if you just like fuckery, please watch it. It's definitely, there's some great fuckery. There's like several pretty avid meme groups based on the film on Facebook and places already and stuff. So like, you know, you'll have some laughs, and as bad as things have been getting lately, maybe we all need some of those. Alright, well, thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have anything you want to say to me about Joe Exotic, or if you want to pull resources together with Cardi B to get him out of jail, comment below. If you like the content on this channel, please subscribe and hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new content. There should be another new video coming out later in this week. I'm going to keep trying to put out 2 or 3 videos a week while I'm under quarantine, so I don't lose my mind. So thank you guys again for watching and supporting the channel. I hope everybody's staying safe, and have a great day. Bye.